Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Coffee
Welcome,
with.
ladies and gentlemen, to the seventh.
Ho! It wouldn't be our show if we didn't have a technical glitch or two. Mike, how you doing, buddy?
That's my bad, man. I blatantly put that intro over an old episode, and I usually turn it off. And then obviously I was like, why is there two Jeffs on the screen? So I am so sorry, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good, man. Hey, you know what? We are pushing towards our 80th show. It's amazing. By my count, this is 77, but I think you've got 76, right?
I've put 76 up. That could be wrong, but it sounds like it could be 77 with 78 for Thanksgiving next week. Watch this space, Jeff. Who knows who you could have on for that? Jerry Jones? The Ford family? I don't know.
We're going to always have big time guests, and today's no exception. Owen Thomas is in. He says, "Aloha, Coach. It's tribe time." You are right. It is time to talk to the tribe and talk a little ball. And man, oh man, we have got I would say a great guest, but a topical guest tonight. And he is now the kicker for the Dallas Cowboys. And his name's Liram Hajrahalu. And I've had the pleasure of coaching Liram in actually two different leagues, both in the Canadian Football League and in the Spring League. And is one of my favorite guys and a great, great success story that we're going to get into tonight. But first, I'd like to welcome Liram to the show. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Coach.
It's my pleasure. You know it's my pleasure. I want to get right into this because I know we don't have you for a long time, but you are not. Your journey has been a circuitous one, and to say the least, because it actually started in Europe, did it not?
No, absolutely it. And just to give you a little bit of background for the audience that don't know me as well, I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but it started way back in '99 when there was a war in Eastern Bloc, and we were living in a small country called Kosovo, and because of the whole Yugoslavia taking over Croatia, Bosnia, and the last little piece of the old Yugoslavia was Kosovo. And so we were actually very fortunate to be alive, to be honest, because when it came down to our little country, we're more located more eastern on the map, and they were coming from the northwest, coming from Bosnia and Croatia, and we'd been kicked out of our homes, and we were headed towards Serbia to go across to Bulgaria. But we get to the border, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not letting you into Serbia to go to Bulgaria to get free." And so we actually had to come back to our town, and basically it's a huge blockade of everyone in their cars and tractors, and we head back to our little village, and we're there for a week. And that week alone was, no school, no nothing. It just it was just a really scary time for me. I was 9 years old, and I still remember quite a bit of it. And I just remember, because we have quite a bit of mountains behind us, and we're at the very bottom of the valley, and you can see snipers all around coming in, and you can hear them shooting at nighttime. And we'd always wonder, as soon as you heard of snipers, did they kill somebody or what happened? So it was just a very scary time when I was young, and that really put a little bit of scary moments in my time. But as soon as that week was over, we were able to, our next step was we have to leave again. We were going to be kicked out of our homes. And right before that, we were lined up all on the wall on our main street. And you just had Serbian soldiers walking back and forth, told us to throw our keys, throw any valuables we had across the street, and we're literally against the wall, the whole town. And I just like the other day I was thinking about, just to sidetrack, just thinking just the fear of, as kids, you understand it, but not really. But as a parent, the things that could be going through your mind at that time, it's like you're lined up against the wall, and there's soldiers every 2 feet with AK-47s ready to point at you and shoot at any moment. And to be able to be let go and be like, hey, you have 24 hours to get out of here, and you're going to go towards the northwest where all the crap was happening. That's where genocide at its peak was happening. And for some luck of the draw, our head guy from our town, because it's just basically everyone's following the first car out of the town, not leaving anything behind. And it's like, what do you take? You take your flowers, you take this, like water, just some of the necessities that you might need in case something does happen. And I just remember my dad taking like all our photos, and this is when like it really hit. He's like, hey, we're gonna hide these photos, we're gonna bury these photos behind this shed. No one will be able to see this, so God forbid something happens to us, you'll have memories of us, for the pictures that we did have. And right there, that was just like, man, like I like as 9 years old going through something like this, it's like surreal. And the fact that when we're leaving, we're on this big convoy and we're told to go northwest where all the crap was happening, and for some reason we end up heading down south towards Macedonia. And we get to the border, and then they're not letting us on, and they're like, you're not supposed to be here, you're supposed to go a different direction, giving us hell. And we end up sleeping the night in our cars. And next morning, word got out that, hey, our little town was in big trouble for pulling a move like this. And luckily, the Macedonian border were like, hey, anyone who's from this town, our little town, Prelipnica, everyone needs to come like through the border right now before it's too late. And of course, there's other towns there that have been waiting to go over, but they haven't been allowed to go over. And they're like, oh, we're from there as well. So you can just imagine the amount of people trying to crowd a border just to get free. And we got really lucky. We got over. We were in a refugee camp for 2 weeks, and then our names actually came up for the United States, because you can sign up, hey, I want to go to Australia, I want to go to whoever was accepting refugees at the time. And we had heard all the European countries were like, hey, you can come here until the war is over, but once the war is over, you have to go back. And my dad always wanted to come to Canada, just because he had 5 uncles in Canada. So he always wanted and heard great things about it. The fact that you had some family support, he always wanted to go there. But our names actually came up to go to the States first, because they were accepting more refugees. And then one of our uncles, he's very successful engineer in Calgary, and he had known some people from the embassy in Canada, ended up speaking to them and be like, hey, we got to get these guys on this plane. But in order to do that, you have to retract your name from the States and put your name in the hat, basically, to go to Canada. And say Canada doesn't allow you, then now you're SOL. Oh, so man. Another crazy moment. And so our cousins actually took our spots, and they're actually in North Carolina. So when I had signed with Carolina Panthers last year, they're like on top of their mind, because they're huge fans. So they end up going to Carolina under the same last name. And then we end up putting our names there, and our uncle was like, hey, just put your name there. We're trying our best. I'm on the phone every day trying to get there with the embassy to get you on the plane. And both my family with my parents and my sisters were 5 of us. And then my uncle, my dad's older brother, and his 2 kids were the other 4 people. So we were the last 9 people on the last plane to Canada to leave the refugee camp. So make long story short, we got to Canada, and soccer. I played soccer all my life, and of course now soccer is much more developed in Canada. But back then it was just like play one day, or you practice one day, you play one game, so it wasn't as serious. And so I didn't get involved until grade 10. When grade 9, I had a coach. It was just Coach Darcy McCardle was like, just come out for football. I'm like, no, it's too dangerous. I want to play soccer and basketball. And I'm like, he's like, you'd be great. You got big legs. Like, they would never be able to tackle you.
Wait a second now. This is the same kid that was standing against a brick wall.
Yeah.
With soldiers with AK-47s, driving to who knows where. Yeah. Can't get across the Macedonian border. Yeah. You must have been steeled against anything, and you're a little worried about a little football game? Come on.
Well, that's what I was saying. That's what I was asked on the weekend after the game. Do you feel any jitters? And I'm like, man, like, as crazy as it sounds, honestly, I've played so many games, in the CFL, and we've been together through a lot, in crazy weather games, and, in the Canadian Football League. up in Hamilton. That stadium has no mercy for anyone, and how that wind blows. So when it came to playing in Dallas, for me, it was just like you're saying, there's no pressure there. I'm just thankful to be alive. Never mind playing a sport in like the biggest stadium in the world. So,
what now? You go and make the transition, or at least go try football.
Yeah. He had said, just come and try it for one day, and if you don't like it, I'll never bother you again. And most guys in high school, they'll always try like grade 12. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna do it for fun. But those guys that always, and the stories I always heard is like, when in those grade 12s, their biggest regret was I should have tried it from grade 9. You know what I mean? And so me in grade 10, I'm saying that, like, hey, I'm going to try it. And of course, with the coach knew I was athletic in terms of playing like the kicking position, but he thought he could use me in other ways too. So I actually ended up playing O-line. I was a right tackle, a right guard. My apologies. I was a right guard. And I had a really good tackle that anytime I had a big guy in front of me, I just have to take half the guy and he'd have two. He'd hold on to one and punch with the other.
All right. Then you go to Western Ontario University, which for a lot of our international viewers may not understand, that is one of the premier academic and one of the best football schools in the country. Have a great college career. Drafted into the CFL.
Undrafted.
You were undrafted?
Brett Lothar and Billy Pavlopoulos, if I'm pronouncing it right. Both of them were drafted my year, and I was undrafted. And East-West Bowl, which was always held, not always, but quite often held at Western in May. And I had ran into Kyle Walters the one year. And I'm like, Kyle, what do I need to do to play in the CFL? And he's like, you know what, Liram, your field goals are good. Kickoffs are great. If you're going to be a Canadian, you got to do all three. And half my career, Daryl Wheeler, who's one of my kicking coaches now, he did the punting and I did the field goal kicking. So it wasn't until my 4th year I started punting. So I only had 1 year of actual punting experience. So I decided to come back and do my master's in sports management and coaching and leadership. So, and then I decided to come back, and that's when I had a little bit more experience. Our team did really well. We went all the way to the national semifinals, and Kyle called me the Monday after that, and that's when I first signed in Winnipeg. And that's when my very first time against Brett Maher was during that camp.
It's amazing, fans. Yeah. I have been so lucky, so fortunate to have some really, really outstanding kickers. And Liram now is the third or fourth. Ty Long, who was in BC, is now running for the Chargers.
Spoke to him yesterday.
Brett Maher, who was with us here in Hamilton, and then was with the Cowboys. Yeah. Right. Yourself. Justin Medlock. Right. I've been really fortunate, but let me tell you something. This guy that you're listening to today is probably my favorite, and I don't know if I've been around a kicker who was a better teammate than Liram is. And I will tell you, fans, that here's an example. Liram would take out of his own money, buy pizzas for the special teams players to encourage them to watch extra film after they didn't need to be there. It wasn't required to be there, but he would. I mean, he is that kind of teammate. And Liram, this journey that you've been on, right? Obviously, one of our big fans, Baralissimo, who's a huge Bears fan, he said, sent this in. He said, waking up not knowing if today is your last day is pressure. Football is fun. Absolutely. You've been on an incredible, incredible journey. And anybody that thinks this has been easy has to understand. How many times have you been cut or told you weren't good enough?
Well, NFL alone, I think this was my 11th or 12th try to have a workout. And so I've gone through it all. And to go back to your point for some of the listeners, in the CFL, there's actually a CFL PA rule where you can only practice for 4.5 hours. So you either start at 9 o'clock or 1:30. So most times teams start at 9 and we have to end by 1:30. So at 1:30, guys are allowed to flee away and go do their own thing. And, but over the time, I realized that some of the best, because Canadian football is 3 downs, and some of the best teams that go far in the playoffs are the ones that have very strong special teams unit. And as much as the coaching has to do with it and putting us in a right strategy, but it was always the fact that guys didn't have enough tape, enough film to watch what other teams are doing. And I strongly believe in 2019 why we were so successful was because guys, spent that extra half an hour of, just grabbing a bite to eat with the guys, get to know each other a little bit better, build that camaraderie off the field. But when you get on the field, you're talking about these type of things. And I think that's why it kind of led us to be more successful. And to me, I thought that was a no-brainer. So as long as guys were willing to come spend an extra, $40-$50 a week just to get the guys together in the room, which would pay dividends later to potentially be enshrined. And we were so close to winning the Grey Cup that year and to being enshrined forever in Hamilton Tiger history. I thought that was the least I could do, just put these guys in the room together, because as coaches, they're not allowed to be like, hey, you need to be here. It's all voluntary. They only have you between 9 and 1:30. So when guys come in to work out, you either work out before or after if you want. But, if you care about your job, you will, of course. But it was just some things that I try to do to help our team to kind of, get over the hump of what's been trying to get that Grey Cup. But yeah, as far as the journey, nothing is easy, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, just because even I've been contacted by obviously the Ticats and Winnipeg, and just because they've been wanting to see if I'm willing to come back to the CFL. And you know what? And every time I talk to Berkey or you, coach, or anybody else, it was never about, hey, it's about the money. For me, it was always about, I want to reach that next step. I played in the CFL for 6 years. I was fortunate enough to win a Grey Cup. I've done what I needed to do at this moment. I just want to try and see if I can reach this next level of playing in the NFL. It's one of those things when someone tells you can't do something, it gives you that fire of like, yes, I can, and I'm willing to put everything in my power and my energy towards getting to that. But with that being said, without a support system, how important that is. Without, your wife and your parents and your sisters and brothers and everyone around your inner circle and your coaches, if they're not all bought into the same thing, the train's not going to go anywhere. And that goes for the teams as well.
Okay, now explain to our viewers.
Mm-hmm.
I know you personally. I
Yes.
know what you're made of, right?
Mm-hmm.
People outside, the noise. We always talk about the outside noise, right? And you mentioned 11 times you've been told you weren't good enough,
Mm-hmm.
or that somebody was better than you, or whatever. I mean, there's a million ways to say it, right?
Right.
You've been in Carolina, you've been in Dallas before, you've been with the Rams. I can't even name them all, right?
Yeah.
How did you deal with it when people said, "What are you doing? Go back to the CFL, go back."
Yeah.
You never, quit on this dream. It's, you're close, but
Yeah.
did you ever think about giving it up and just saying, I'm going to go back and I can be an all-star in the CFL forever? And
yeah, no, obviously those thoughts come through your mind, but every year, once we have a new year, both my wife and I actually sit down and write our goals. We actually write them down. Okay, what are our family goals, football goals, career goals, whatever it is? We both write our goals. We have it in a big white, we got one of those things from the dollar store, and we write them down on why I want to achieve those. And because I'm a firm believer of goal setting. And, I've been told no all my life in terms of, I was never supposed to play football. I was never supposed to be alive in the first place. So for me, someone had said once, so you're playing with house money. It's I wouldn't consider my life as house money, but in terms of football, because the thing is with football is I can always go work. I have my MBA in finance. I have a master's in leadership and coaching. So I have that aspect of my life set up to whenever I do stop playing, I can go. But for me, it was more or less is like, yes, I'm being told no. And the fact that for me, I was seeing guys in these workouts that were playing, and, you go to some workouts, you could be better than that guy. But, for some reason, teams saw something in him and they want to keep him to sign him. And the fact when I saw those, I'm like, okay, well, if this guy, I was in a workout with this guy and I know how good he is and I know how good I am. So when I kept like comparing every workout, I obviously sit down and be like, okay, this guy's did this better than me, or I did better than this guy in this scenario. And so every workout, just go back and trying to not fix, but get better at
improve it. Yeah, exactly.
In that area. So I can get a more common yes than no. And when I was seeing some of the guys I went up against and I was training with them, I'd go to like the Zonner camps and I'm like, this guy's a 4-year pro and like, and I can't play in the NFL. It's like, because for some reason the CFL gets discounted as not as a tough league. But in my opinion, playing with wider hashes, playing in some of the weather that we play, playing a bigger field, or every punt, every kickoff, pretty like 99.9% of the kickoffs get returned. I find the CFL is a lot more difficult. And in the CFL, I'm doing all three. Where here, I'm just doing kickoffs and field goals.
Well, I think that's a great point, because we've had American kickers every year come up and try this game.
Yeah.
And the angles are so different.
They are.
The field is so different. The whole thing is different. So I want to just touch on,
Sure.
because you mentioned that you go to the Rams and you're the best kicker in training camp.
Yeah.
In the preseason.
100%.
You have the best percentage. No matter how you slice it, right? Because I monitored it really closely.
Yeah.
They should have kept you. And in the end, you get Les Snead gives you the call. What did they say to you about that?
Coming up to it, because I'm going to be honest here, and because they had drafted Sam Sloman and they brought McGinnis and myself in mid-April, and through the first week, I was leap years ahead, and I kept, I'm not gonna wow you with my leg. I have a 60-yard leg, but I'm not gonna get out to 70 on every single day. I'll get out there when I need to, but not every single day. And so I just kept being consistent all camp long, whether it was preseason, we had the preseason, which was the mock games, everything else. And I have every kid jotted down. I have their timing. I have everything that was being reported basically during our practices. And in my humble opinion, I would like to say that I was a minimum of 12% better than both of them at 12% and 12%. And that's me saying that because I was there.
Yeah.
From what I saw.
And I'm with you.
And so when I went in,
nobody who watched that could dispute that.
Yeah. And when I went there, my kickoff, even in the preseason stuff, like the mock games, my kickoffs were better, everything else. And given my thing was, my wife and I always whenever I'm at a workout or even anything, we never try to put the car in front of the horse type of thing. So come after the second preseason game, I was 5 for 5 in the first one, and I think I was 6 of 9 for the second one because we ended up going to our third holder, and both of them were worse than that. And so I'm like, okay, so overall, if they were to weigh preseasons or the mock games alone, I'm number one. If they were to do practices, I'm number one. And the fact that it's COVID, and if you get COVID, you'll be out for 2 weeks until you pass it. I'm like, I punted in the CFL. So hello, I'm at worst, I go to my wife, at worst, no brainer, practice squad. And then hopefully I can be the number one guy to actually play for the Rams. And then so when they call me in that room and they're just like, hey, listen, we're going to let you go. We really appreciate it. You did a great job. And I try to ask them, was there anything I did? Is there anything I can do to improve? All that. But, once they let you go, they're not going to tell you what to work on so you can be better and beat them later on.
Come back and beat them.
Yeah. So for me, I was I had never, that was the hardest I've been hit, you know what I mean? And just to get that, I'm like, I did everything, because you'd think, hey, NFL, best players play.
Nope. Not
yeah,
always.
not
Not
always,
always, buddy.
For me, like, but it taught me a lot. And I was, as much as I want to have resentment towards that situation, I've really come to peace with it, because you know what? They gave me the opportunity. They put me on the map. So to say that I'm very disappointed at that moment, of course, I'm a competitive guy. I want to win. I want to be the guy. That's like, if you don't have the type of mentality in pro sports, then you're not going to last very long. So for me, someone else beating me, as Michael Jordan said, I took that personally, right? So for me, I felt like I was slapped in the face. But at the end of the day, it's like we had a couple other teams contacting us and all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, it's gonna be good. And so we went to a few workouts, but some teams were just calling us in just in case. They bring you in, you stay for the week, and then if they get COVID, then like, oh, we have Liram on quarantine right now, so you can play this week. So some teams would just bring you in just to keep you around. So you'd go away for a week, sit in a hotel, and then you're trying to find a field where you can jump a fence and kick a ball. So it was a rare 2020. But that moment, as much as I'd like to have resentment, I've come to peace with it and spoken to management even after the fact. Like I spoke to Les a few weeks ago, and I'm just, without them, I wouldn't be here today, right? It always takes that one guy, one team, and same thing with Winnipeg. Like they gave me the shot to get me on the map, and then you're a coach, you give the guy the opportunity, and once you give the guy the opportunity, you take off the training wheels, and it's like, this is your turn, and show us what you got. So as much as I felt really angry towards them, I found peace and still cheer them on, because I still have some of the friends on that team.
All right, let's go to a happier moment.
Yes.
When you get your opportunity, you sign with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Go down there. And how did they do it? Who did it? And what was the scenario around them coming to you and say, Liram, you're on?
For this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was brought in training camp, and I was brought in after the first game of the season, week 2 for a PR position. So when they called me last week, they're like, hey, we want to bring you in, this and that. And I had seen Greg do a couple of squibs. And, like on TV, you don't know if they're on purpose or if they're, by accident, right? So for me, when I saw the squibs, I'm like, because he had back surgery in the off season, so I'm like, oh wow, like he might be injured. But once we got here, they told us that he had COVID, so I'm like, okay. And they had brought Brett Mahar, which I had competed against in Winnipeg, and in the CFL. So for me, it was between him and I, and my biggest thing has been, hey, we're playing the coach was like, we're playing Cardell Patterson this weekend, one of the most prolific, kickoff returners. It's like Speedy B and missed field goals in the CFL. If you're playing against Hamilton Ticats and your field goal is above 45 yards, you're thinking twice to take that shot, right? So they're like, we need to have a guy who has a big leg. And so the way we did the workout was each of us got 3 kicks in a row, left, middle, right, and then he'd move us around until we had 12 field goals. And fortunate enough, like he put us through, because in the CFL, the time stops on a, out of bounds or missed pass or whatever it is. They'll stop it until the ref is ready. Where in the NFL, that clock is running. So we did Maydays, we did timeout. I thought I performed really well. I was hitting the ball really well. And it's just the fact that it shows that I've been preparing for these type of moments, because I was on schedule of, kicking, working out, yoga, everything I can do to possibly prepare for these type of moments. And I just connected really well with the ball that day. My kickoffs were really good, and just really impressed the front office, and for them to, pull me aside. And the crazy thing is our assistant GM, Will
McClay.
Yeah, he because every time I've been released, hey, Liram, we need to chat. He always like.
So he called you, and you're thinking.
One time he called me. The other time he pulled me aside, because when I was released, my second week, it was on an off day, so I wasn't in the building. He's like, you can come in, or we can just talk over the phone. So every time I have interaction with him, it's been negative. So they tell us to go shower up and then come back for lunch. And I'm like, hey, like I went 12 for 12. My kickoffs were great. I had one that was like minus 14, another one that was minus 9, minus 8, and I think like minus 2. So I'm like, the only one I'd like to have back is that minus 2. But, you know, I crushed my 58-yard field goal, made all my kicks. I'm like, if I don't get chosen, like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. You know what I mean? So I'm go shower up. I walk towards the lunch area, and I see Coach McCarthy and Will having lunch, and Will calls me over, and I'm just like, my heart just drops for a second, because every time I've had interaction with him, it's been like, hey, go pack your bags.
The Grim Reaper.
Yeah, Grim Reaper. And he's like, hey, and I didn't even hear what he said the first like 4 or 5 words, because he's like, hey, we're gonna go meet up with Scott. He's gonna get you to sign the paperwork. And for me, it was like, because I've met a lot of these guys, but I've only been there for 1 week at a time every like month. So like I know most of the people's names, but I don't know them that well. So when I first heard like go to Scott, and I'm like, oh crap, is that the guy that books our flights? And my heart just drops. I'm like, no, please, come on. And he's like, we're going to sign you to a practice squad this week. And then if Greg can't clear protocols for COVID, you're going to have the opportunity to play on Sunday. So I was fortunate to have the opportunity to play on Sunday. It was a long time coming. And I think, and he, Will, and a lot of reporters asked if you felt any jitters, but you know, the type of games we've played up there, it's really prepared me for moments like playing for the Cowboys, you know, and playing the NFL. To me, it's I felt really comfortable and felt at home, you know. So we weren't kicking in minus 20 with winds blowing at 60 kilometers or 40 miles an hour. So I was good.
You're kicking in as like a space station there.
That's what I said, right?
Hey, I got to tell the fans.
Mm-hmm.
When I called you and said, congratulations, I'd like to have you on this show.
Yeah.
Liram's reaction was, he texted me back and he said, well, that's if I'm here this week. The life of a kicker, there is no security whatsoever.
No security.
You know what? The thing that's so good about it is you have done it.
Yes,
now
sir.
They can never say, you've taken away, you know, and so much of making a pro team is taking away their reasons to tell you no.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've taken away another one of the reasons, because I remember having this when I was in Kansas City. We had brought in Lawrence Tynes because they wanted to replace Todd Peterson. And Lawrence had a good training camp. We go to preseason. He misses a field goal against the Redskins, right? And the next week gets an extra point blocked against the Bears, and they cut him, even though Todd couldn't kick off and Todd's range was only to about the 40 on field goals. But they just didn't want to take an unknown guy into a pressure environment. And that's one of the hardest things for you guys to overcome. I'd like to take some questions from the listeners, because we've got such a great bunch of listeners. Mike, can you come on back out and we'll fire some questions at Liram? You there with us? Oh, I think we got Michael's.
No, it's 5 hours ahead here. I'm tired. It's all good. Great chat though, guys. I have it here. So the first one is from Irish Cowboys. So they were saying, for a start, fantastic guest, by the way, looking forward to it. But they were wondering, Liram, what's the biggest difference that you've seen since joining the Cowboys? What stood out to you on your arrival to the Star for the first time?
Is he speaking? This was just a text, or am I able to?
Yeah, so he asked, like, we put a tweet out. Just
I'm assuming in terms of facilities, or in terms of, you think?
Just the whole thing.
I think like just the general experience.
What's it like to be a Dallas Cowboy?
I mean, it's honestly like it's a football fantasy, to be honest, out here. Like where we are, I'm like sitting. Like my wife came to the game on the weekend, and she got to the room while we were in practice. So I left her room key downstairs, and she comes in. She's like, "Oh my God, the stadium's like right here," because right behind me is the practice stadium, and it's like 12,000 seats. Right. And we have our fields, we have a grass field and a turf field there as well. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, it's right downstairs. I'm like, that's our like practice stadium. She's like, just wait till you see the actual stadium.
Your wife thought it was. Your wife
Yeah,
thought
she thought it was like
back-
right here because it's like it's big. Like it's a big stadium. So when you walk into it, it only has 6,000 seats on each side. But like if it were to extend it to the other side, you can fit easily like probably 18, 20,000. So she thought, hey, it's indoor stadium. This is where he practices. So she didn't know that it's the actual stadium's in Arlington. So she's like,
Okay,
great,
now-
I'll wake up in the morning and just go tailgate.
I hope the fans heard what you said.
Oh yeah.
This is an indoor 12,000 seat practice facility that the Cowboys have.
If you guys want to see a true view, if you watch Hard Knocks, because the Hard Knocks were with the Cowboys this year, and they did a flyby with a drone of the whole area, and it's honestly remarkable. Like, I mean, it's the most valued team in the world, right? I mean, it only makes sense to have these type of facilities, but you really feel like a pro and like you've made it when you have like facilities like this to show you like, hey, like you're saying, you have. The thing is, Texas, this is the mecca of football.
Everything's bigger, right? Everything's bigger.
Like,
hey, I got to tell you, speaking of bigger, the first time I went into the stadium, the Jerry Dome, Jerry World, Jason Garrett was the head coach at the time, and he invited me to come to a scrimmage they were having during mini camp. And so I took my son and we went in, and when I'm standing on the sideline, Liram, and that's where I've lived my whole coaching life, on the sideline. So, but I found myself after about 2 minutes, I didn't watch the field. My eyes were on that incredible video board. Did that same thing happen to you?
Honestly, because when you're like right on the field, it's hard because like your neck started hurting. So I try to, but again, I just try to be in the moment as much as I can and just focus on the game. But I've the people that I've like talked to, watched the game, is like, I should have just watched the game at home. I was watching the TV more than the actual game because the stadium is so big, and the monitor is like, it's huge. It's incredible. Like even high school football on Fridays, they'll have packed houses here. 10, 12,000 watch like playing high school football. So it's great to be in an area like this where, like I always said, even like in the CFL, you feel like when you go to Winnipeg, you go to Saskatchewan, you go to Hamilton, you go to like any of these teams, you feel like a pro because you have all these fans that are such diehards, and that really makes a difference for the players because when you're going out to grab a bite and like, hey, that's Liram, or hey, that's Mazzoli, or you know what I mean? It's people like that's the type of thing like that makes you proud to play on those teams. For Hamilton, all the guys how proud they are. No one's stepping on that logo, no matter who they are. Yep. Remember BC Lions in 2009?
Yeah, I remember because I was at BC when they did that stupid move and you guys bumped us. Michael, give us another question for Liram.
Yes, sir. I've got one more question here. I just want to give a shout out to UK Cowboys fans, Liram, who've been shouting you out all day. Awesome. Alan says hello as well, and also Jamie saying welcome to the Cowboys family. Last question, Fred Flunk saying, who is the biggest influence player in the Cowboys locker room this season?
Influencer player?
So the biggest influence in the Cowboys locker room, and he means a player, not like Jerry Jones or anything like that.
Honestly, I think Dak, his leadership. I mean, he is the quarterback, but even just the fact the way he carries himself, he's the leader of the team. You know what I mean? But even as the type of person he is, you can tell right away from a guy. And we always talk about this, coach. It's like, I'm a kicker. I was just a free agent a week ago, and I come into this team, and yesterday he comes up to me and he's like, hey, Liram, great game. Like, he knows me by name. And for someone of his magnitude, of his stature, and, he took the time to learn my name, come say hello, and, how's everything going, and just to talk to me for a second, that means a lot for me, especially for someone coming outside from the outside coming in. But overall, it's just the way he carries himself, he's always, taking care of his body. He's always in the meeting rooms. He's always, on the field. He's leading the team. And I think that's why he's been really successful in the NFL. He's that pro's pro, he knows how to handle business. And I think he's been the biggest influence for the rest of the guys. And I think guys jump on his back and believe in what he's bringing to the team. And I think that's why they've been so successful so far.
There's a huge amount of, in my opinion, over a half dozen teams in the NFC that are, I think, worthy of Super Bowl consideration at this point in the season, just past the halfway mark. The Cowboys, I think, are one of those teams, Liram. For you guys to have such a huge bounce back win against the Falcons, what was the energy like in the locker room afterward? What was the feeling in the locker room afterwards?
You know what? Because the Falcons, as well as we played, they've been playing really well. As you know, like in the last few weeks, they've grinded out some big wins. So we knew from the get-go that this was a statement win, not to show the everyone around outside of football, but it was more or less for us. So all week we were dialed in, meetings, weight room, on the field for practice. We were dialed in. We knew what we had to take care of, and we really stuck to the game plan throughout the whole game. And afterwards, it was just one of those like you can breathe again, because Atlanta is not a bad team. They've grinded some big wins, and so just the fact of like, hey, it's one of those like mental checks, like, are we this good? And it's like, then you have a game like against the week before against the Broncos, and it's like the self-doubt start creeping in, but then you like play next week and you come out the way you come out. It's like, yes, that it's a confidence builder of, yes, we are that good, and it's getting back that mojo. So I was even saying to some of the guys, like from a coach's standpoint, you'd rather have that happen now and use this as a learning point. And it's like, hey, going up that the mountain, right, that we always talk about in the Ticats, like, it's part of the journey, and it's kind of, you wanted to go up. You're going to have some low points, but you'd rather have them now than towards the end. So if it could happen at any time, it was perfect timing, I think, from outside perspective, that that happened the week before, and the way these guys responded were dialed in from the get-go.
All right, now Owen Thomas, who comes from a very little town in Wales, had the question for you. He says, do you pick yourself as a kicker in fantasy football leagues?
You know what's crazy? I used, like, in college, I had like 2-3 basketball teams. I even got into hockey, and even football, I had 2 or 3 teams. And because I've been like really focused on football, I just haven't actually been in a team. I've been asked to join some of these teams for fantasy, but all my friends picked me to, like, hey, I can put you on my fantasy. I put you on my fantasy. Don't let me down. I'm like, okay, like it's really cool when I get those type of emails or text messages, and if I did have it, I'd definitely put my money on myself. But Well,
I tell you what, that is exactly what you have done, my man. You have bet on yourself, and I'm so happy for you.
I appreciate that.
So proud of you.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and honestly, I've learned so much from you over the years. And even when we're just talking football with Coach Fossil, it's like some of the things that we always talk about is you really helped me like increase my special teams IQ. So when I'm in those meetings, I don't sound as just your typical kicker. I actually know what I'm talking about. So it helps me a lot, and I really owe a lot of thanks to you. And it's been a great journey, and to be able to be where I am today, I'm just super grateful. Not from just from all the coaches I've had in the past. We always speak about standing on the shoulders of those guys that came before us, and that's part of coaching staff, players, management, and they're all part of that journey of where we are today.
Well, listen, my man, where you are today is just about ready to take off, and I'm happy for you. Like I said,
I appreciate you.
You're a great story for everybody about persistence and toughness and self-belief. And
I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Coach. I really appreciate you having me.
Love you.
I love you too. All right.
Take care. Oh boy. Ha. Tough one. Ha. Man. I'm telling you, I'm so proud of him.
I'm just literally typing a message to say thanks to him. Now that was great, even for me just listening to it. I feel like you could listen to him for like 2 weeks talking about his journey and stuff. So
awesome. Pretty special. Well, my man, That's actually a whole show with Dallas Cowboy kicker Lirim Hajrahalu, and I'm glad we invested that much time with him. I do have to question. I have one more question, and it's not for Lirim, it's for you, Michael. Tell me about your picks last weekend.
I can't remember if there was like 11 or 12 games on Sunday. I picked 4 correct. I picked every late game wrong. I picked the Rams last night. So
did you see that coming? Did you see that coming at all with the Rams? Because I'll be honest,
a couple of guys on the show last night said it could happen, but when you see like Von Miller and OBJ, this whole hype around their debuts for LA in Levi's, you just don't think the San Fran are going to go over the line, especially when LA has won that many games. But by God, they made the Rams look small last night.
I'll bet
George so unpredictable, Jeff.
George Kittle planted, and I mean planted. And so for the fans that may not know what I'm talking about, when you plant somebody, that means you pick them up and put him on the ground. And he took Von Miller and planted him.
Took him to church.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. They were so much more physical than the Rams. I mean, Garoppolo threw 19 passes in an NFL game. This isn't 1973. This is 2021. He threw 19 passes, and they blew the other team out. So phenomenal week for the 49ers. I mean, if you're a 49er fan, you had to love every minute of it.
Absolutely. And it's so good through 10 weeks. It's so unpredictable. It's so enjoyable. But also, Thanksgiving next week, Jeff, I have no idea what day we're going to go out. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll decide next week, and we will see the plans. It's sad that you're not going to be on TV cutting a bit of turkey on TV, but I'm sure you'll be over soon.
I know this is the first time in years now that I haven't been able to do that, but our CFL playoffs, we have one game left. We play Saskatchewan at home this weekend. If we win, we host a playoff game. Certainly playing in front of our fans is something we want to do. There's great fans here, and it'll pack the house, and it'll be a great environment. We don't want to have to go to Montreal, but we're going to have to wait on getting back to the UK until our season's over, and hopefully it'll be over we can bring back a Grey Cup championship and talk about that on the show. But until next week, Mike, I think it's time that we say aloha.
Yes, sir. Aloha. I think let's do it next Friday after the 3 games on the Thursday. Maybe we'll come back and confirm it. But aloha, mahalo.
Oh, so we'll be like leftover Thanksgiving turkey.
It's the best turkey of them all. So.
All right, my man. Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone who's commented, folks.